Babe, this is my house. If we get married, this is where we will live. I am sorry, I do not have luxury. What? This is where you live? Andrew's heart raced as he led Sophia down a lonely path on the edge of the village. Every step felt heavier than the last because he believed this moment would decide the future of their relationship. At last, they stopped in front of a small, weather-beaten mud house with a rusty roof and cracked walls. Andrew swallowed hard and pointed at it. This is my home. He could not make himself look at her. He was sure she would leave him after seeing where he had supposedly grown up. After a long, painful silence, Andrew slowly turned towards Sophia. She stood still, staring at the old house, and a look of shock spread across her face. But before I tell you what happened next, subscribe if you love emotional stories with unforgettable twists, because what Sophia did next changed Andrew's life forever. Andrew was not born into wealth. Long before people called him one of the richest businessmen in the country, he was just a little boy growing up in a small village where hunger was a familiar visitor. His father died when he was still too young to understand what death really meant. One day his father was there, carrying him on his shoulders and promising to buy him sweets when business got better. The next day, all that remained were tears, mourners, and a fresh grave. From that moment on, life became a daily struggle for Andrew and his mother. Every morning before sunrise, she would roast fresh corn by the roadside, hoping enough people would stop to buy from her. Some days she sold almost everything. Other days, she came home with most of the corn unsold. On those days, they would boil water to make themselves feel full before sleeping. There were weeks when they lived on just one meal a day. Andrew hated seeing his mother pretend she was not hungry. She would always smile and say, "I have already eaten at the market." But Andrew knew she was lying because he could hear her stomach growling in the middle of the night. One afternoon, while helping his mother by the roadside, Andrew watched several expensive cars speed past them. The drivers wore expensive suits, and the passengers laughed as if they had never known pain. Andrew stared at those cars until they disappeared into the distance. His mother noticed the look in his eyes and smiled gently. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. Andrew looked at her with determination far beyond his age. "One day, Mama, I will become one of those rich men. I will buy you the biggest house in this country. You will never have to roast corn again." His mother smiled proudly, but placed her hand softly on his shoulder. "My son, I pray that God blesses you with wealth, but never forget something." Andrew looked at her carefully. Money can buy comfort, but it can never buy a sincere heart. Never judge people by what they own, and never let money change the kind of person you are. Andrew nodded. At that age, he did not fully understand her words, but they settled quietly in his heart. Years passed, and before Andrew could fulfill the promise he had made, sickness took his mother away. She died before she ever saw the success her son would later achieve. On the day of her burial, Andrew stood beside her grave with tears flowing freely down his face. He knelt on the ground and placed both hands on the fresh sand.
"I am sorry, Mama.
I could not save you. I could not give you the life you deserved. But I promise you this. I will become successful. I will make your name one people will never forget." That promise became the fire that pushed him every single day. Life was not kind to Andrew. After finishing school, he started a small business with almost nothing. He rented a tiny office that was so small it barely had enough space for a desk and a worn-out chair. Many nights, instead of going home, he spread a thin mattress on the floor and slept inside the office because he could not afford rent for a proper apartment. There were mornings he woke up with mosquito bites all over his body, washed his face in a tiny bucket, wore the same ironed shirt, and went out to look for customers with a smile, no matter how tired he felt. Success did not come quickly. Business partners cheated him. One man disappeared with almost all the money he had struggled to save. Andrew sat alone in his office that evening, staring at the empty account balance on his laptop. His eyes filled with tears.
"Why?" he whispered.
Why does this keep happening? There was nobody to answer him. He walked into several banks, hoping to get a loan to rebuild his business. One after another, they rejected him. "Your business is too risky. You do not have enough collateral. "We are sorry, but your application has been declined." Every rejection felt like another door closing in his face. Friends who once promised to stand beside him slowly disappeared. His phone became quieter every week. The people who had once called him every day suddenly stopped answering his own calls. Some even crossed the road to avoid greeting him because they believed he had failed. But Andrew refused to quit. While others slept, he worked. While others celebrated, he stayed in the office planning his next move. He learned new skills, met new people, and slowly began rebuilding everything he had lost. One small contract became two became 10. He started another company, then another. Years of sacrifice finally began to pay off. His businesses expanded across the country. Investors came looking for him instead of the other way around. Newspapers wrote about his incredible journey from poverty to success. Business magazines placed his smiling face on their front covers. Before long, Andrew became one of the richest businessmen in the country. He bought a magnificent mansion that overlooked the city. His garage was filled with luxury cars. He wore expensive watches and tailored suits. Thousands of employees worked under his companies, and many young entrepreneurs looked up to him as an inspiration. People admired his success wherever he went. But every evening, after the meetings ended and the lights in his office went off, Andrew returned to his enormous mansion, sat alone at a dining table made for 12 people, and quietly ate dinner by himself. The house was beautiful, but it was painfully silent. The applause he received during the day could never fill the emptiness he felt at night. Hoping to change that, Andrew began dating. At first, he believed love would come naturally. His first girlfriend loved expensive things. Hardly a week passed without her asking, "Andrew, when are you buying me another car? My friends have all upgraded theirs." Andrew smiled and bought her gifts, believing love required sacrifice. But whenever he delayed, she became cold and distant. That relationship ended as quickly as it began. He met another woman who seemed kind until she started sending him pictures of designer handbags every few days. "This one would look beautiful on me," she would say with a laughing emoji. Soon, every conversation became about shopping. Another relationship ended. Snorts, the third woman, constantly told him she loved him. But Andrew later discovered she was secretly seeing another billionaire, comparing the two men based on who spent more money on her. The betrayal crushed him. Then came another woman who seemed perfect. She loved taking pictures with him at expensive restaurants, posting them online with captions about love and happiness. One afternoon, Andrew decided to test her. He politely told her he wanted to reduce unnecessary spending for a while because he wanted to expand one of his businesses. Her smile disappeared almost instantly. Within weeks, she ended the relationship without looking back. After years of disappointment, Andrew noticed something that broke his heart. None of the women had ever asked about his dreams. None wanted to know what kept him awake at night. None asked if he was happy or lonely. Their conversations always ended the same way. "What are you buying for me next?" Sitting alone one evening inside his mansion, Andrew sighed deeply. "Is this all I will ever be to people?" He asked himself. Just a wallet? The loneliness became heavier than all the wealth he had gathered. Through all those years, there was only one person who never changed toward him, his driver, Mike. Mike had worked with Andrew for years, but their relationship had grown far beyond employer and employee. They ate together whenever work was less busy. They joked during long drives. Sometimes they sat outside the mansion in the evening, talking about football, family, and life. Andrew had quietly paid the school fees of Mike's younger brother and sister without expecting anything in return. Snorts. Every time Mike's mother called, she would say the same prayer. "God will continue to bless you, my son. May he send people into your life who will love you with a sincere heart." Mike respected Andrew deeply, but he never treated him like a walking bank account. He never demanded gifts. He never took advantage of Andrew's generosity. One quiet evening after returning from work, Andrew and Mike sat outside the mansion watching the sunset. After a long silence, Andrew finally spoke. "Mike." "Yes, sir." Andrew looked down at the cup of coffee in his hands. "Do you think anyone will ever love me for me?" Mike stayed silent for a moment before answering. Why would you ask that? Andrew gave a sad smile. Because every woman I have ever met only seems interested in what I can buy. Sometimes I wonder if I was not rich, would anyone even notice me? Mike nodded slowly. I understand how you feel. Andrew sighed deeply. I am tired, Mike. I am honestly tired. Mike looked at him thoughtfully before speaking again. Can I tell you something? Go ahead. Maybe the problem is not your money. Andrew frowned slightly. Then what is it? Mike smiled gently. Maybe nobody has ever met the real Andrew. Before they know your heart, they already know your bank account. Andrew stared at him without saying a word. Mike continued softly. How can someone love the real you when they have never had the chance to meet him? Andrew sat there in complete silence. Those words echoed in his mind again and again. For the first time in years, he felt as though someone had finally shown him where the real problem had been all along. That simple conversation planted an idea in Andrew's heart, an idea that would soon change his life forever. Mike's words stayed in Andrew's mind for days. No matter how busy he became with meetings or business deals, he could not stop thinking about what his driver had said. Maybe nobody has ever met the real Andrew. The more he thought about it, the more he realized it was true. Every woman he had dated already knew he was rich before they even knew his favorite food, his fears, or the painful journey that had brought him to where he was. One evening after work, Andrew called Mike into his study. Mike walked in carrying a notebook, expecting another work schedule. Instead, Andrew sat quietly on the couch with a strange smile on his face. Mike, I need your help. Mike smiled. You know I will always help if I can. Andrew leaned forward. I want us to switch places. Mike frowned. Switch places? Yes, just for one evening. Mike looked confused. Sir, I do not understand. Andrew laughed softly. You will become me, and I will become my own driver. Mike blinked several times before bursting into laughter. You cannot be serious. I am very serious. Mike stopped laughing when he realized Andrew was not joking.
No, sir.
Absolutely not. Andrew raised an eyebrow. Why not? Mike shook his head. Right away. What if people find out? What if I say the wrong thing? What if someone asks me about business? Sir, this is a terrible idea. Andrew chuckled. Relax. It is only for one party. Mike folded his arms. One party can still ruin everything. Andrew stood up and walked closer. David is hosting a house party this weekend. You know David. He is my oldest friend, and I have already spoken to him. He knows about the plan, and he is willing to help. Mike stared at him in disbelief. Even Mr. David agreed to this. Andrew nodded. He actually laughed for almost 5 minutes before agreeing. Mike rubbed the back of his neck. Sir, I do not think I can do this. Andrew placed a hand on his shoulder. Mike, I trust you. You do not have to be perfect. Just smile, greet people, and let me see how they treat us when they think you are the billionaire. Mike sighed deeply before shaking his head with a helpless smile. One day, your ideas will send me to the hospital. Andrew laughed loudly. Then I will pay all your medical bills. Mike could not help laughing too. Fine, just one party. Just one party, Andrew repeated with a grin. The following afternoon, the mansion became the stage for one of the funniest moments either of them had ever experienced. Mike stood inside Andrew's dressing room, staring at rows of expensive designer suits. He carefully picked one and tried to wear it, but after several minutes of struggling, he finally called out, Sir, I think this jacket is fighting me. Andrew walked in and burst into laughter. Mike had somehow managed to wear the suit jacket inside out. Mike. Andrew laughed so hard, he nearly fell onto the bed. How did you even manage this? Mike looked down at himself and laughed too. I have been wearing uniforms all my life. These rich people's clothes have too many buttons. Andrew helped him wear the suit properly before handing him an expensive wristwatch. Mike looked at it carefully. Sir, this watch alone is probably worth more than my father's house. Andrew smiled. Just do not drop it. Mike quickly fastened it around his wrist with both hands. Meanwhile, Andrew changed into Mike's neatly washed but simple clothes. He wore ordinary trousers, a plain shirt, and comfortable shoes. Looking at himself in the mirror, He barely recognized the man staring back. Mike looked at him and laughed. "You really look like a driver now." Andrew smiled proudly. That is exactly the point. They spent the next hour practicing their new roles. Andrew repeatedly walked to the car, opened the back door politely, and said, "Good evening, sir." Mike immediately started laughing. No, you sound too important." Andrew laughed. "Then teach me." Mike showed him how he usually greeted him every morning. Andrew copied him until Mike finally nodded with approval. Then it was Andrew's turn to coach Mike. "Remember, walk slowly. Do not look nervous. Billionaires do not rush." Mike tried walking confidently across the room, but halfway through he stumbled over the edge of the carpet. Both men burst into uncontrollable laughter. "If you walk like that at the party," Andrew joked, "everyone will know you stole my clothes." Mike pointed at him, still laughing. "And if you keep smiling too much while opening car doors, they will know you have never driven anyone before." The mood became light, and for a while, Andrew forgot all the pain that had pushed him into making the plan. On the evening of the party, they drove toward David's luxurious mansion. Even from a distance, the place looked magnificent. Luxury cars lined both sides of the long driveway. Bright lights lit up the massive building. Well-dressed security officers welcomed guests at the entrance, while photographers captured the arrival of important personalities. Celebrities, business executives, politicians, and wealthy entrepreneurs filled the venue. Andrew parked the expensive car outside the entrance before stepping out first. He quickly walked around and respectfully opened the back door. Mike adjusted his suit, took a deep breath, and stepped out exactly as Andrew had taught him. The change was immediate. Almost every eye turned toward him. A group of beautifully dressed women smiled brightly as they hurried over. "Good evening, Mr. Andrew." One of them greeted him excitedly. Another admired his expensive watch. "That watch is gorgeous." A third woman laughed softly. "Your suit looks amazing." Within seconds, several ladies surrounded him. One asked for a selfie. Another politely asked for his phone number. Someone else complimented his shoes. One woman even joked, "If you do not mind, I might just follow you home tonight." Mike smiled awkwardly, remembering Andrew's advice not to panic. Standing only a few steps away, Andrew watched everything quietly while pretending to organize the car keys like a professional driver. Nobody paid attention to him. Guests walked past him without even looking at his face. One elegant woman casually stretched out her hand and placed her empty wine glass in front of him. "Driver, please help me throw this away." Andrew accepted the glass politely. "Certainly, ma'am." She walked away without even thanking him. Andrew stood there holding the empty glass for several seconds before quietly smiling to himself. "So, this is how invisible poor people feel," he whispered sadly. It was not anger he felt. It was something much deeper. For the first time in many years, he understood what it meant to be ignored simply because people believed you had nothing to offer them. Inside the party, David welcomed everyone with a cheerful speech before raising his microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to have one of the country's finest businessmen with us tonight. Please help me welcome my good friend, Andrew." Loud applause immediately filled the hall. Mike froze. He quickly looked toward Andrew, who gave him a small, encouraging nod from across the room. Taking a deep breath, Mike slowly walked toward the stage. Every step felt heavier than the last. As he climbed the platform, the applause grew even louder. Some people stood to their feet, others whistled excitedly. Before Mike could even say a single word, voices from the crowd began praising him. What an inspiration, a self-made billionaire. "We are proud of you, Andrew." Mike forced a nervous smile, gripping the microphone tightly. Standing quietly among the guests in his simple driver's clothes, Andrew watched the whole scene. Nobody was clapping because they knew Mike. Nobody admired him because of his character. They applauded the name, the wealth, the power, and the success they believed stood before them. Andrew lowered his eyes as a painful realization settled deep inside his heart. These same people who celebrated the man on stage had completely ignored the man standing among them. Not because of who either of them truly was, but because of what they believed each one possessed. At that moment, Andrew's heart broke in a way no business failure or financial loss had ever managed to break it. As Mike stood on the stage trying his best to act like one of the country's most successful businessmen, Andrew quietly remained among the crowd, watching the guests applaud a man they believed was rich. The applause echoed through the hall, but Andrew's attention slowly drifted away from the stage. He looked down and noticed one of his shoelaces had come undone. Not wanting to trip, he bent down to tie it. As he straightened up again, his shoulder accidentally bumped into the arm of a young woman standing beside him. The crystal wine glass in her hand slipped, and before either of them could react, the deep red wine splashed across the front of her beautiful white dress. The music suddenly seemed to disappear. Conversation stopped. Heads turned toward them from every direction. Several guests gasped loudly. Andrew's eyes widened with shock. "Oh my goodness, I am so sorry," he said right away. Without thinking, he reached into his pocket for a handkerchief and began trying to wipe the stain from her dress. The wine only spread farther across the white fabric. "I am so sorry," he repeated, his voice full of panic. "I was not looking. Please forgive me." Around them, whispers quickly filled the room. "He is just the driver. He is finished. She is definitely going to insult him. That dress looks expensive." Andrew braced himself for humiliation. After all, he had seen wealthy people lose their tempers over much smaller things. But instead of shouting, the young woman looked at him with calm eyes and smiled gently. "It is all right," she said softly. Andrew stared at her, unable to believe what he had heard. "No, it is not all right. I ruined your dress." He kept trying to clean the stain with shaking hands until she gently held his wrist to stop him. "You have apologized enough," she said with another warm smile. "It was an accident." There was no anger in her voice, no pride, no insults, just kindness. Before Andrew could say another word, she quietly excused herself and walked toward the restroom to see if she could clean the dress. Andrew remained standing exactly where he was. He watched her disappear into the hallway, completely speechless. "Who reacts like that?" he whispered to himself. For the rest of the evening, he could not stop thinking about her. She was different from everyone else at the party. While others looked at status and appearance, she had looked at his sincerity. Several minutes later, Andrew noticed her standing alone outside the mansion on a quiet balcony overlooking the beautifully lit garden. A cool evening breeze gently moved her hair as she admired the night sky. Gathering his courage, Andrew slowly walked over to her. "Excuse me?" She turned around and immediately recognized him. Before she could speak, Andrew apologized once again. "I am really sorry about your dress. I have been thinking about it ever since it happened." She folded her arms playfully and laughed. "If you apologize one more time, I will have to start charging you." Andrew blinked for a second before laughing. "I deserved that." They both laughed together, and somehow the awkwardness disappeared completely. They began talking as though they had known each other for years. There was no tension, no pretending, no showing off. The conversation simply flowed from one topic to another. Andrew asked, "By the way, I am Andrew." She smiled warmly. "I am Sophia. It is nice to meet you, Sophia." "Likewise." Andrew noticed how peaceful she seemed. Unlike many of the guests inside, she was not interested in showing off or competing for attention. "So, what do you do?" he asked. Sophia smiled proudly. "I am a nurse." "That must be difficult," she nodded. "Some days are very hard, especially when you lose a patient. But seeing someone recover and go home to their family makes every difficult day worth it." She began sharing funny stories about her experiences at the hospital. She told him about an elderly patient who kept pretending to forget taking his medication just so the nurses would spend more time talking to him. Another patient had hidden snacks under his pillow, even though he was on a strict diet. Andrew laughed so hard that tears almost formed in his eyes. He could not remember the last time someone had made him laugh without trying to impress him. After a while, Sophia smiled and asked, "What about you? What do you do?" Andrew immediately became nervous. This was always the moment that changed everything. He looked down for a few seconds before quietly answering, "I am just a driver." He waited for the familiar look of disappointment. Instead, there was silence. Then Sophia smiled exactly the same way she had smiled before. "That is honest work," she said. "Every job deserves respect if it puts food on the table." Andrew stared at her, his throat tightening. Nobody had ever respected his fake profession before. Every other woman had looked down on drivers as though they were invisible, but Sophia simply accepted it without hesitation. He almost felt like crying. They exchanged phone numbers before leaving the party, and from that day their friendship slowly became something much deeper. They spoke on the phone almost every evening. They met whenever their schedules allowed. Andrew purposely avoided expensive restaurants and luxury hotels. Instead, he invited Sophia to simple places where ordinary people spent their time. They walked through affordable public parks, talking for hours about life, family, and childhood memories. Sometimes they bought roasted corn from roadside vendors. And every time Andrew smiled quietly, remembering his late mother. Sophia noticed the smile once and asked, "What are you thinking about?" Andrew simply replied, "Someone I miss very much." She gently squeezed his hand without asking any more questions. On another evening, they bought a single bottle of soda because Andrew insisted they did not need more. They shared it while laughing at children playing football nearby. They took long walks through quiet streets after sunset, pointing at the stars and talking about the future. Sometimes they said nothing at all and simply enjoyed each other's company. Andrew secretly watched Sophia during every date. He wanted to know if she would eventually complain about the simple lifestyle he had shown her. But she never did. Not once did she ask for expensive gifts. Not once did she compare him to richer men. Not once did she complain that he was only a driver. Every day, Andrew became more convinced that Sophia was unlike anyone he had ever met. Yet one question kept troubling his mind. Would she still feel the same if she believed he had absolutely nothing? Eventually, he decided there was one final test. He spoke to Mike, explaining everything. Mike listened quietly before sighing. "You're still testing her." Andrew looked guilty. "I have to be completely sure." Mike shook his head, but reached into his pocket and handed Andrew an old key. "This belongs to my family's old house in the village. Nobody lives there anymore." Andrew accepted the key. "Thank you. Just be careful," Mike replied. "Good people do not like being tested for too long." A few days later, Andrew invited Sophia to visit what he claimed was his childhood home. She agreed without hesitation. They traveled to a quiet village before, continuing on foot along a narrow, dusty path surrounded by trees and open fields. The walk seemed endless. Andrew grew quieter with every step. Sweat gathered on his forehead, even though the weather was pleasant. Sophia noticed right away. "Andrew, you look worried." He forced a smile. "I am all right." She was not convinced, but chose not to ask more. Finally, they reached a tiny abandoned hut standing alone on the edge of the village. The roof leaked in several places. The walls were badly cracked, and the old wooden door looked ready to fall apart. Andrew felt his heartbeat pounding inside his chest. "This," he said softly, pointing toward the house, "is where I grew up." Silence followed. Sophia slowly looked around the small compound. Andrew lowered his head, preparing himself for the disappointment he had seen so many times before. But when he finally looked up, tears had filled Sophia's eyes. Before he could understand what was happening, she wrapped both arms around him and hugged him tightly. "I cannot believe you grew up here," she whispered. She gently kissed his forehead before looking into his eyes. "You have been through so much." Andrew remained speechless. Sophia smiled through her tears. "We will build a better life together. One day, we will have a home filled with love, and this place will only become a memory." Those words shattered every wall around Andrew's heart. Tears rolled freely down his face as he hugged her back. For the first time since becoming rich, he felt completely loved without conditions. That night, however, sleep refused to come. Andrew sat alone in his room, staring at the ceiling. Instead of feeling happy, he felt overwhelmed with guilt. Sophia had accepted him with all her heart. Yet, he had built their relationship on a lie. The next morning, Mike found him sitting quietly with a couple of untouched coffees. "You did not sleep, did you?" Mike asked. Andrew slowly shook his head. "She deserves the truth." Mike nodded. I was hoping you would say that. Andrew sighed deeply. I am scared. Mike looked him straight in the eyes. Andrew, if she truly loves you, do not let your own fear destroy something beautiful. Tell her the truth. Andrew remained silent for several moments before finally nodding. You are right, he said quietly. It is time she knows who I really am. After spending the whole night thinking about Mike's advice, Andrew finally made up his mind. He could no longer keep living with the guilt of hiding the truth from the woman he loved. If Sophia truly loved him, then she deserved honesty. Early the next morning, he picked up his phone with trembling hands and called her. Hi, Sophia. Her cheerful voice immediately made him smile. Hi, Andrew.
How are you?
I am fine. I would like to take you out for dinner this evening. There is something important I need to tell you. She laughed softly. You sound so serious. Andrew forced a smile. Maybe I am. All right, I will be there. Throughout the day, Andrew could barely focus on anything. He practiced what he was going to say again and again. He prayed silently that Sophia would forgive him. As evening came closer, Sophia entered the address Andrew had sent her into a taxi driver's navigation. She expected another quiet restaurant or one of the small parks they loved visiting together. Instead, the taxi slowly stopped in front of enormous black gates guarded by uniformed security officers. Sophia looked outside in confusion. I think there has been a mistake, she told the driver. Before either of them could say anything else, the giant gates slowly opened. The taxi drove through a long driveway lined with perfectly trimmed flowers and towering palm trees. Luxury cars were parked neatly on both sides. At the end of the driveway stood a breathtaking mansion lit by elegant lights. Sophia stared through the window in complete disbelief. Andrew sent me here, she whispered to herself. The taxi stopped, and before she could gather her thoughts, the front door opened. Andrew slowly walked out wearing a perfectly tailored black suit. His appearance was completely different from the simple driver she had always known. Sophia stood frozen as he walked toward her with a gentle smile. Welcome, he said softly. Andrew, she whispered. What is going on? Instead of answering right away, Andrew led her into the beautiful garden where candles surrounded a beautifully decorated table. The setting was peaceful, but Andrew's heart was racing. He took a deep breath before slowly reaching into his pocket. Then, right before her eyes, he went down on one knee. Sophia gasped softly. Andrew opened a small velvet box, showing a sparkling diamond ring. Tears immediately filled his eyes. Sophia, before you answer anything, there is something you must know. She remained silent. Andrew struggled to find the right words. Everything I told you about myself. He paused. It was not completely true. Sophia frowned in confusion. Andrew lowered his head. I am not a driver. The silence that followed felt endless. My name is Andrew, he continued quietly. I am the owner of the company where Mike works. Mike is not my boss. He is my driver. We switched places because I wanted to know if someone could love me without my money. The old hut was not mine. It belonged to Mike's family. I lied because I was afraid that if people knew who I really was, they would only love my wealth, not me. Sophia did not speak. She simply stared at him as though she had never seen him before. Her expression slowly changed. First came confusion, then disbelief, then deep pain. Finally, anger filled her eyes. She took a slow step backward. You tested my love? She asked quietly. Andrew nodded, tears filling his eyes. Sophia, please let me explain. She shook her head. No, answer my question. You tested my love. I was scared. You lied to me every single day. Andrew tried reaching for her hand, but she stepped back again. Everything was real except my identity, he pleaded. My feelings for you were never fake. Sophia's voice broke as tears rolled down her cheeks. Do you know what hurts the most? It is not that you are rich. It is that every memory I have now feels like a lie. Andrew shook his head desperately.
No.
Every laugh, every walk, every conversation, they were all real. Sophia carefully removed the engagement ring from the box and placed it back into Andrew's trembling hands. I loved the man I believed I knew. Her voice cracked. But I do not know who. you are anymore." Before Andrew could stop her, she turned around and walked away. "Sophia," Andrew shouted.
She did not stop.
"Please," she kept walking. "Sophia, I am sorry." Tears streamed down her face as she disappeared beyond the gates without looking back even once. Andrew remained standing alone in the garden, still holding the ring. For the first time since becoming successful, he felt completely powerless. The following weeks became the darkest period of his life. Every morning, he called Sophia. Every call went unanswered. Every evening, he sent messages. None were answered. He drove to her apartment hoping to speak with her. The landlord simply said she moved out last week. Andrew immediately went to the hospital where she had worked. "I am sorry," the receptionist told him politely. "No, Sophia has been transferred to another branch." "Which branch?" Andrew asked desperately. "I am afraid we cannot share that information." Every lead disappeared. Every door closed. Days became weeks, and Andrew slowly lost himself. He stopped eating properly. The cheerful man his employees once admired disappeared. Meetings were canceled because he no longer had the energy to attend them. Important business decisions were delayed. Several projects suffered because Andrew simply sat alone inside his office, staring through the window. Mike watched helplessly as his friend slowly fell apart. One evening, he entered Andrew's office carrying food.
"You have not eaten today."
Andrew did not respond. Mike placed the food on the desk. "You need to take care of yourself." Andrew gave a weak smile. "What is the point?" Mike sighed deeply.
"Do not say that."
Andrew lowered his head. "I found the woman I had prayed for my whole life, and I destroyed everything with my own hands." Mike blamed himself too. "Maybe I should not have agreed to the plan." Andrew slowly shook his head. "No, this is my mistake." Even with Mike's constant encouragement, Andrew completely lost hope. Then one afternoon, after weeks of emotional pain, endless sleepless nights, and barely eating, Andrew suddenly collapsed inside his office. Mike rushed toward him in panic. "Andrew." There was no response. Without wasting another second, Mike carried him into the car and sped toward the nearest hospital. Fate had one final surprise waiting for them. Inside the emergency department, the nurse on duty hurried toward the stretcher. The moment she looked at the unconscious patient, she froze. "Andrew," she whispered. It was Sophia. Her heart nearly stopped. For several seconds, she simply stood there, overwhelmed by shock. Then her professional instincts quickly took over. Quickly, she called to the other medical staff. "Let us move him into the emergency room." Every trace of anger disappeared the moment she saw how pale and weak he looked. Nothing mattered except saving his life. She remained by his side throughout the treatment, carefully watching every change in his condition. During the following days, although other nurses were available, Sophia found herself checking on Andrew whenever she had the chance. She adjusted his medication, checked his temperature, and quietly sat beside him whenever her shift allowed. Watching him lying helplessly in the hospital bed reminded her of the kind, humble man she had fallen in love with. Slowly, she realized something she had been trying to deny ever since leaving him. Despite the lies, she still loved him. Several days later, Andrew slowly opened his eyes. Everything around him was blurry. As his vision became clearer, the first face he saw sitting quietly beside his bed was Sophia. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They simply looked at each other. Then tears began falling from both of their eyes. Andrew's voice trembled. "I thought I would never see you again." Sophia wiped away her tears without answering. Andrew slowly reached for her hand. "I am sorry, Sophia. I am so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I only wanted to know if someone could love me without my money. After everything I had been through, I became afraid. But I should have trusted you instead of testing you." Sophia held his hand tightly. "I was hurt because you lied." She paused, struggling to hold back more tears. "But I should have listened before walking away. I was so angry that I never gave you the chance to explain everything." Andrew shook his head. "You had every right to be angry." Sophia smiled sadly. "Maybe. But love also means learning to forgive." Andrew could no longer hold back his emotions. He pulled her gently into his arms, and the two of them hugged tightly, both crying as months of pain finally melted away. Several months later, after rebuilding the trust between them with complete honesty, Andrew invited Sophia to another beautiful garden. This time there were no secrets, no disguises, no pretending. He smiled warmly before kneeling once again. "Sophia," he said, looking directly into her eyes, "this time, I am standing before you as the real Andrew. No lies, no tests, no fear, just a man who loves you with all his heart. Will you marry me?" Tears of joy filled Sophia's eyes. She smiled brighter than ever before. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will." Andrew gently placed the ring on her finger as they embraced once again. Their wedding became one of the happiest days of their lives. Friends and family gathered to celebrate the love that had survived misunderstanding, pain, and forgiveness. Mike proudly stood beside Andrew as his best man, smiling from ear to ear throughout the ceremony. Snorts during his speech, Andrew looked toward Mike and said, "If not for this man, I might never have discovered what true love really looks like. Thank you for standing by me when I could not even stand by myself." The guests applauded warmly, while Mike fought back tears. In memory of his late mother, the woman who had taught him that money could never buy a sincere heart, Andrew started a charitable foundation that gave scholarships to children from poor families and paid for medical care for struggling communities. Sophia gave herself wholeheartedly to the foundation, combining her compassion as a nurse with Andrew's desire to give others the opportunities they had never received. Together they used their wealth not to impress the world, but to change lives. Their story became proof that true riches are measured not by what you own, but by the lives you touch. And as our story comes to an end, remember this: money can attract many people, but only character shows who truly belongs in your life. A heart that loves you when you have little is the same heart that will stand